Good morning, friends. Welcome back to another episode of GM Philosophy in the Morning. I'm the GM Philosopher. Today, we're talking about running fortune teller encounters. Now, I love fortune teller encounters, and they're one of the funnest tropes in fantasy gaming. And in fact, the reason I even wanted to make this video is because this conversation got brought up in my Discord. I loved the conversation that went on in the GM Philosophy Discord, and so I had to give my 2 cents on it. Shout out to all you awesome people in Discord who are talking about this. By the way, if you want to join my Discord, link is in the description. You should join. It's awesome. It's free. We talk about all kinds of cool stuff in there. So boom, jump in there and hang out with us. But anyway, in pretty much every one of my long-term campaigns, I've had an epic, creepy, weird fortune teller scene and encounter for at least one of my players. Oftentimes, many of the players will get involved in this, and I'm going to run you through how I run these. There's some question about how to do this the best. Should you use tarot cards? Should you try to make, homemade bone dice? Should you use dominoes? There's also a question about how to actually make the fortunes kind of seem to be legitimate and come true when you don't know what's going to happen. And I'm going to take you all through this. There's also sort of an element of like, well, how do I flavor my fortune teller? How do I make my fortune teller seem cool? And how do I give them a unique method for the fortune telling? Now, I'm actually maybe a little bit different from some people in that I tend to run these with dice. I don't necessarily bring props for it, though I do think tarot cards or dominoes or even homemade bone dice could be really awesome. I just happen to use a slightly different technique. I'm going to show you that technique in this video. So this is an ebook I created called the GM Philosopher's TTRPG Fortune Teller's Guidebook. 40 plus page, actually 45 pages, including 7D100 tables, a guide to running awesome fortune telling encounters for your party. And so this basically walks you through everything I do when I run fortune telling, like fortune teller encounters. So you'll notice that this book basically comes right in with the welcome to the Fortune Teller's Guidebook. There's a little storyline, fun introduction here, and we get right to how to use this book. So I'm just going to take you through this. Now, first of all, you want to prepare or randomize the setup. Now, the encounter is one of the most important parts of a fortune teller encounter. And what I mean by encounter is setting up the encounter, making it cool, giving it a cool vibe, making it mysterious, making it a little creepy. So there's the ambiance, there's the location, and then there's the aesthetics of the fortune teller themselves. So I've got some random tables and some methods here, but basically step one is we roll for fortune teller description. Step two, we roll for the location. Step three, we roll for the fortune telling method. And step four, we decide what the fortune teller demands. Now, this ebook is available. Link is in the description. You can buy this for actually $2.99 in my personal bookstore, but you can also just like brainstorm. You use your own creativity for these things. Like that, you'll get the 45-page guide with the random tables to roll on this if you want, but you can also just fill these in with your own creativity or use other random roll tables on the internet. This is mostly just me outlining my methods to you. Okay, so the first thing we do is we want to basically come up with these four things. And then step two is we want to engage the players. So we role play the fortune teller, obviously, and then we ensure the buy-in. Basically, the fortune teller will ask for something from the characters. There's always some kind of cost. So it's never just like a freebie. It's like, oh, let me tell your fortune. It won't cost you anything. There's always some cost. There's like a buy-in, and we're going to get to that in a moment. And that's part of what gets the players more engaged in it, like gets them to buy into it, gets them to participate willingly and intentionally. And that's part of the emotional hook of it. And then step three is going to be the reading itself using a polyhedral dice system. Hey, real quick, do your players ever do unexpected things? Do you ever find yourself thinking, what the heck, all my plans have gone to ruin? These players, as creative as they are, have just gone off on a tangent, and now I don't know what the heck is going on. If you ever feel this way, then I have the perfect tool for you. It's called the Ultimate Plot Randomizer. Ignite your campaign with endless adventure. This ebook contains 4 D100 tables, lets you random roll plot arcs on the fly. Roll on the hook table, the complication table, the climax table, and even on the wild and wacky table to add plot elements that your characters would never see coming. I give this ebook away for free to everyone who joins my email list. It's just my way of giving back and saying thanks to you and giving away a resource that, to be quite honest, I use nearly every single time I play and every time I session prep. If you want to get this ebook, all you have to do is join my email list. Link is in the description. If you sign up, you'll get an email autoresponder sent to you between a few seconds to 15 minutes after you sign up. The time tends to vary, so be a little tiny bit patient. It might take it like 15-20 minutes to show up in your inbox. And make sure to check your spam folder. But in that first email, the download link will be available. Click on it, download, print, Boom, put with your stuff. Never get caught without amazing plot arcs ever again. Roll random plot arcs for days and days and days. Your player characters will literally not be able to keep up with how many amazing plot arcs you're able to create, and thus you will never have an adventure go off the rails again. I'm kidding. They'll probably still go off the rails. You'll just be way more prepared. Like I said, link is in the description. Grab that. Don't miss it. All right, let's get back to the video. Which is how I like to do it. We make a fate roll, is what I call it, and then you kind of compare and combine results, and you come up with a total, and then you reveal the fortune by rolling on the fortune tables. And then you interpret the result, and then there's the follow-up. And so I'm just going to go through all of these steps with you. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to roll on the preparing the setup, basically preparing for the encounter. Now I'm going to grab my percentiles, and I'm going to go ahead and roll on the first random table. So we have the fortune teller description. We rolled a 9. The inkwell medium, elegant quill in hand. They scry by dipping it into a bottomless inkwell and scribbling swirling glyphs. Each black swirl is said to hold a fragment of truth. Now, there is a lot of open-endedness to this. So this is just giving you a starting point for creativity. So what I'm picturing here is I'm picturing an elven woman. I'm picturing her with ink black hair, black fingernail polish, and then wearing jewelry that's like blue and green gems and then silver. And I'm picturing she has quite a large tattoo in the middle of her chest, and she's wearing kind of a low-cut dress, kind of like what I would call like a shaman-like dress. And then she's got like a tribal tattoo there. And then I would also say she's wearing like a necklace that has a little bit of bone dangling from it. This is just for me what I come up with in my imagination, right? And when I read this inkwell medium, that's what inspiration gives me. So now let's go to the next table here. We're going to go to the locations table. So where does she tell her fortunes? Where is her fortune telling headquarters, so to speak? So this is another kind of interesting thing. A lot of people will use the tropes. It'll be like, oh, she has a wagon that she travels in a gypsy tribe with, or it's like she has a little hut on the market square, or she's like got a little spellcaster's cottage, a dark cottage hidden in the woods, and there's a cauldron out front. But we're gonna roll on this. So we rolled a 29. The rooftop garden under ivy-covered trellis, overlooking a bustling city, yet tranquil among climbing vines and potted herbs. The fortune teller claims the twining plants channel Earth's energies into the reading. Okay, so right here we've got this inkwell fortune teller, and she lives in a nice apartment, but she has a rooftop garden under an ivy-covered trellis, and here she has a table, and this is where she reads her fortunes. So she puts her, stuff on the table, and she sits down and is overlooking the beautiful city. So it's kind of a beautiful thing, but then it gets a little creepy, right? Okay, so this gives us some good inspiration for this encounter. So the next thing we're going to do is go to the next table, and this is the methods table. Now, you'll notice that in the, basically the table that gave us inspiration for the fortune teller herself, she used an inkwell and then parchment. But I like to combine that with different things, right? So I'm thinking to myself, that's probably not the whole picture. She's going to write the fortune on there, in kind of a magical type way, maybe as she's reading it or as it goes down, and that's part of the process. But I feel like there's more to it. So we're going to roll on the methods table. So I'm going to roll a 16, sand divination, drawing or scattering lines in sand and analyzing shapes, breaks, or intersections. So this tells me that she is going to sit down at the table on her basically garden balcony under the vines of the trellis. It's going to be at night. There's going to be candles lit. You're going to see the cityscape in the horizon. She's going to put some old parchment on the table. She's going to get her quill and her inkwell, and they're going to be magical. Like there's going to be a magic inkwell, magic quill. She's going to put them down beside her. She's going to do some chanting, and I'm going to probably flavor it with like a local deity of that region, right? So it's like someone in your game, a god or goddess or a deity or a power, even a patron who would make sense to like put into the story here. So you can like make that flavor that to your own setting. But then I'm going to have her have a box of sand. And I'm picturing a little bitty, like a treasure chest, like little bitty, and it's got a little lock on the front. And she's going to take a key. She's going to pull it out of her pocket. She's going to unlock it. And I'm even picturing the key has like a skull on it, and then the lock has a corresponding like crossbones on it. I don't know why. That's just something I think about. So she's going to put it in there, and she's going to open it. And there's going to be silk cloth, and she's going to open it to reveal black sand. So she's going to basically draw inky swirls on the paper for the divination, and she's going to give the sand, she's going to push it across and give it to the player to interact with. Okay. And the player is going to sprinkle the sand onto the page, and then her magic is going to cause the sand to cause like patterns to emerge, and those are what she is going to read, because you always want the player to have a buy-in. You want the player to have a part in it. Now, that's not the only thing the player is going to do. The player is also going to have to pay a cost, but you always want the player to have some participation in it, and that's where they're going to roll their fate counter, and I'm going to show you that here in a moment. So let's go to the next D100 table, the request table. Now, what is she going to ask of the player character? What is she going to ask for them to contribute to the reading? There has to be something of the energy. They have to give something. There's a cost. Okay, so I'm going to roll my D100s. I rolled a 63. A lock of fur if beast folk or shifter. So she's going to ask for this. And if they are not, like if they're, let's say they're a druid, this would make sense. They're going to have to shift, and they're going to have to give her a lock of fur. Or if they're a werewolf or something. However, if they are not, then they're going to say this isn't going to work, and she's going to think, she's going to kind of think for a minute, and I'm going to re-roll. So I'm going to go 58. A fragment of an hourglass. She's going to ask, do you by chance have an hourglass? Or even just a fragment of an hourglass. She's going to ask them this, right? And then maybe they're going to say yes or no, right? If they say yes, she's going to say, great. I'm going to need you to shatter it for me. And then that's a cost. They're going to have to destroy their hourglass. But if they don't have it, and you can even set this stuff up ahead of time, right? But let's say they don't have it. She's going to say, is there anything else that would work? I'm going to roll an 85. So we're searching for something that'll work. Thread of the seam of your armor. So she's going to look at them, and they obviously probably have armor or even a jacket or clothes. She's going to say, well, I'll be honest. It would have worked better with a bit of fur or an hourglass. But if you have a small thread from your jacket or your armor, that will suffice. Tear one out and hand it to me. So, but because of this, because they didn't have the first two things, I'm going to give them a slight negative on their fate counter. Okay. So they're going to give a thread. And here's what's going to happen. She's going to kind of wad up the thread, and she's going to emit some magical energy, and she's going to do some chanting, and the little thread is going to poof into like fire, and it's going to leave a little bit of ash, which she's going to sprinkle into her inkwell, and then there's going to be a little flash of power, and then there's going to be a little smoke that rises from it, and now the ink is ready, and it is time for her to write the fortune. And she's going to say, take the sand. As I draw onto this parchment with my quill, I want you to sprinkle the sand on it. Close your eyes. Think back through your life. Think about the times before. Think about the times to come. Focus on the things that you care deeply about, and sprinkle the sand and let your soul speak through you. So you kind of want to give it like a cryptic, kind of like, unique sort of intro. You want to make the fortune teller describe what they want. And the point of this is to get some realism, some immersion, and to make it cool. And I like to make it fantasy themed and a little creepy if I can. So that's kind of like an example in this case of what I might say. And I want to get into the character of this fortune teller. So that also plays a role. But anyway, now it is time for the fate roll. And I'm going to teach you how to do that. So we have prepared the setup. We've engaged the players, right? We got them to buy in. They gave the seam of their jacket or the hourglass or the cutting from their fur. But now we're going to do the reading, the polyhedral dice system. So the player needs to make a fate roll. Now, because they didn't have the first two items that she tried to get from them, I'm going to say they have a -2 to their fate roll. And then I run it just like with a D20, and then it's straight up like a 10. So greater than a 10 is a positive, lower than a 10 is a negative. So let's say the player rolls. I'm going to roll a D20 right now. So I rolled a 14. They're going to have a -2 because they didn't have the first two items she asked for. but that's going to give them a 12. So that's going to be what's called a high player roll. Now I'm going to roll for her, and also because they did not have the first 2 items, she is going to have a -2 as well to her check. So she rolled a 15, which means that hers is high. So it's high player roll plus high teller roll is what we got, which means the fortune is clear and potent. Expect vivid symbols and near certain glimpses of what's ahead. I usually take this to mean I'm going to be a little more specific. I'm going to take more liberty from where I plan to take the story to forge the fortune, and I'll show you what that means. But that's how you do the fate roll. And so we have them roll, and then that's it. I don't usually add any skills or anything to this because this isn't something you're necessarily good at. It's a magic thing, and it's the fortune teller's skill that matters. But her skill is also based on the energy you're giving off and on how good the materials are she has to work with. But anyway, all right. So the next step is revealing the fortune. So we're going to scroll down to the A, B, and C fortune tables. Okay, so we're going to go all the way down here. So if we come to the 3-part D100 fortunes tables on page 36, so you basically roll on table A to find the symbolic or mystical element, table B to determine when, where, or under what circumstances, and then you roll on the C table for the event's deeper meaning or consequence. Okay, so here's an example, but we're just going to go ahead and roll for it. Okay, so I'm going to roll on table A. 29 gives us a scarlet banner. Now we're going to go to table B, the condition. So I'm going to roll my percentiles. I rolled a 53. We're going to scroll all the way down here. When the last star fades at dawn, and then we're going to roll on the 3rd element, the outcome, meaning, result, or fate. So I'm going to roll. I rolled a 94. All right, let's go to 94. Cuts all ties that bind you here. Okay, I'm just going to share with you how I would run this type of thing in my game. Now, here's where you come into the tricky part. It's like, yeah, we can make a kind of cool sounding fortune with this, but how do you actually make it come true? So here's the trick. The trick is when you tell a fortune that's supposed to come true as a GM, the most important thing to do is to remember that once this fortune is told, there's some fate woven into the story that is really important for you to keep in mind. And honestly, this is the number one biggest challenge to this, is keeping it in mind. Will you remember this fortune, 6 sessions from now, or will it be a thing that kind of fades into the back of your mind and you forget about it? The number one most important thing is that you keep fortunes top of mind, because either you're going to plan how they're going to emerge based on like storytelling elements, or you're going to find an opportune time where they seem to kind of come true, and with a couple slight changes, you are going to realize, oh, this could be what the fortune was foretelling, right? So those are the 2 ways you go. And either way is fine as long as it does come true and it doesn't seem like half-hearted or halfway done. So we have Scarlet Banner, and then we have When the Last Star Fades at Dawn, and then we have Cuts All Ties that Bind You here. So basically, she's going to say something like this. As the player's pouring the sand, they see the sand separate into some geometric shapes and like hieroglyphic type figures, and they don't understand what they mean. But as she's reading them, they realize her eyes have glazed over. They see only the blacks of her pupils, which have fully consumed all of her eyes, and she seems to be staring through the pages as if the hieroglyphs are giving her insight into some different dimension or time-space plane. And she says, I see a scarlet banner in your future. I see that this banner will appear when the last star fades at dawn. And since they both rolled positive outcomes, I'm going to add an element here. And I'm going to say, it will herald the end of a great battle. The scarlet banner is not only a symbol of your enemy, but also of the bloodshed on the battlefield. It has a dual meaning. So it'll be an especially like violent or bloody conflict, right? And then I'm going to say, at the end of this battle, as the last star begins to fade at dawn, you will have a chance to cut ties to something that is keeping you bound. And then the player might ask for more clarification. She's going to say, perhaps this means something that binds you to your past. Perhaps this means something that binds you to your mission. Perhaps this is something that binds you to a state of mind, or perhaps even to a curse that has already manifested or will manifest. All I can tell you is that your one chance to cut those ties will come when you see the banner. It will be during a great battle, and when the last star fades, this will be your final chance. If you do not cut the ties, you will forever be beholden to whatever it is that has you bound, and then that's what it would be, right? Now, this is not so crazy difficult to set up, right? So here's really all you need to set this up for the future. You really only need a battle. So that's going to be an important part, right? Anytime really there's a battle coming up, like this could be the battle that brings this prophecy to fruition. It could be. A banner is easy to produce at a moment's notice. Maybe partway through the battle, you realize, oh, it's almost dawn. And then suddenly the players see someone pull a banner from their pack, and like the enemies, and realize that is their herald that hadn't been brought out before, but now they've brought it out to try to, invigorate the troops for the final charge, or whatever the case is, right? So a banner is pretty easy to produce. The battle is the hard part. So setting up a battle, and then the timing of it being around dawn. This is an important element of it. But here's even more important. You think to yourself, what is the thing, the binding? What is keeping this character bound? And that will be the thing that you actually have to set up through role play. So this might mean an oppressive relationship with another, like an NPC, or even with an enemy or a villain. Maybe it's a villain they're going to face in that battle. Maybe it is memories. Maybe they start having nightmares. Maybe they start having nightmares of their past, and they have memories that are keeping them held down. Maybe to the point where it's even giving them sometimes disadvantage on their saves, or it's ruining their sleep or something like that, right? So you want to start this now. And as soon as they walk away from this fortune teller booth, you need to slap this note on your GM screen that is, work on the thing that's keeping them bound, keeping them held. Like, what did she mean? There's something, and maybe it hasn't emerged yet, which would make sense because you just now rolled or planned out this fortune. But that doesn't mean that you can't start working it in. And it also doesn't mean that it can't tie to things that were already in motion. You might find a creative way to tie it in. But basically, what I'm saying is this: there are some elements of fortunes that are pretty easy to just wait, and they'll come around naturally. There are some elements that are easy to produce at a moment's notice, like a red banner. That's a pretty easy symbol. But there are some things that do require setup, and those are the things you really want to stay aware of every single session. And you really want to keep those prophecies at the forefront of your mind, because the more work you do in actually putting them in, and I would treat them like a personal plot arc for that character, but the more effort you put into making those things real and just visiting them for 5 minutes every session, the player won't even know that's what you're doing. But the more in tune you get with that, then the more real and immersive it's going to be, and the bigger whoa moment you're going to have when that prophecy finally comes to fruition. And then what I would do is, once the fortune comes to fruition, I would have those words echo in their mind. I would retell the fortune teller's words. Basically, they would hear her voice in their mind as if they're remembering the fortune, and they would know this is the moment. Like, that would be the signal. So that's how I would do it. That's how I would run fortunes. That's how I have run them. That's how I would run them moving forward. And I would use this ebook because I made this. I made it because this is basically a version of what I've always used. I just cleaned it up and made it actually nice and presentable, instead of just having a bunch of random tables lying around that I would roll on. So boom, there you go. And that's how the GM Philosopher runs some awesome fortune telling encounters and makes them cool. And that's going to conclude the video. That's going to be a wrap for today. Thank you so much for coming back for another episode of GM Philosophy in the Morning. I'm here every single day at 6 a.m. Central Standard Time, creating videos about the best game in the world, D&D. I also go live every afternoon, Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. for Coffee Break Live. So tune in there. And then don't forget, here very soon, I'm going to have other YouTube creators actually creating content for this channel, and those are going to be coming on in the evenings. Times have not been disclosed yet, but we are getting there, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, make sure to join my Discord, and hey, I appreciate you all, and I will see you all on the next one. Roll some D100s for me, and I will catch you later.